Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I would say, first of all, I want to start out by saying a very, very huge and sincere thank you to Neil Gar. I'm deeply honored to be a part of this here event. I have been wanting to be a part of these events ever since I first discovered Portal to Ascension in 2017. So for me, it is a great honor to be here and to be able to pass on a very, very important message. In fact, I would say one of the most profound and transformative messages that I think is to be received here at this point in our sort of what we might call consciousness activation. And that is that we are at an incredible choice point with respect to your consciousness, your abilities, and what a few of us here have been talking about today. And that is your mission here in this earth body, the assignments, the lessons, the events that many of us signed up to be here specifically for. We are at the point in our physical earthbound lifetime in which these great events, these great liberations, the great transformation is happening. And so for those of you guys that are not familiar with what I do, I am a multidimensional intuitive reader. I would say in the old days, they called that a professional psychic. There's a little bit of, I guess we could say, a more current term for it now. But what I do is work with the non-physical energetic currents within the body, primarily the energy of the meridians, of our chakras, of the non-physical currents within our organs. And what we're discovering as a whole is that as we enter this stage of fourth density, we have an incredible, incredible ability to begin changing and altering our abilities in our consciousness. And so what I do at this stage of the game is primarily what we call energetic clearing. And that's where we move density, we move emotion, we move what some people call miasmatic energy from the layers of the non-physical body. And what we're finding is that for many of us is sort of the forgotten or the hidden key toward true healing and also expansion of consciousness. And so, you know, without going on a huge long rant, my assignment at this stage of the journey is helping the overall Earth population, all of us strange hybrid beings, understand the phenomenon of energetic healing, understand the phenomenon of what's essentially fourth density energy, and to, you know, effectively and hopefully very, very, you know, in a very gentle and healing way, begin to expand and develop these abilities that every single person here has. And so the way that I've been doing that over the past couple of years is through, number one, my own private work as a clearing practitioner and an intuitive reader. But in 2018, I started what I believe to be, you know, my life's work and one of the overall missions that I was brought into this body to create. And that is this thing called the School of Multidimensional Intuition. And so what that is an ongoing online educational project that is being dispensed essentially through a multidimensional higher self council of beings that I've been working with. And I think one of the things we're going to discover in the near future about the nature of fourth and also fifth density energy is that what many of us understand as a singular higher self is actually a collection of the multi versions of us that have existed throughout space and time. And so what's happening in this, you know, especially in 2020, is that many of us on the earth plane are being called together to begin to disseminate, to begin to teach, and to begin to essentially help everyone remember who we are and why we came here. And so I do that twofold. Number one, through the sort of the classes and the individual work that I'm doing, but also through a very, very incredible new kind of like a multi-dimensional collective that we have created known as the Blue Flame Collective. And what it is essentially is a monthly multi-dimensional training program in which we are taking, you know, these star seeds, these human hybrids, these people, many of the people that are going to be here today, we're also going to be joining and going through, no matter who and where it is over the next coming years, these deliberate paths, deliberate awakenings and activations toward the next stage of your journey. And so we do that in our Patreon group, we do that online, and we also do that in our individual work. And for those of you guys that are watching here today, you're also going to be receiving a very, very special, what I call a true fourth density energetic transmission. And so for those of you guys that are able to tune in or feel any sort of energy in your body, I'd like you to go ahead and just tune into my eyes during this talk. What's happening here is what we're doing today is demonstrating a fourth density energetic transmission. So while Kaylin and I are talking, some of you guys are going to be feeling energy moving through your throat. Some of you guys are going to be feeling energy moving through your solar plexus. And also, a lot of people are going to be getting sensations up at the top of the head. And so it's part of the phenomenon of fourth density energetic transmission. And I'll pause after this, but it is what we came here for. And so I want to literally congratulate everybody that's here and say congratulations. We made it to fourth density. We are here on the earth plane, and it's time to liberate this planet. And so thank you for allowing me to go on a weird rant here, Kaylin. I'll pause there. But yeah, that is what I do. So
Matthew's weird rants are my favorite, so I'm probably going to let him roll. Just an FYI. Okay, so I was wondering, so there are a lot of different Ascension teachings type brands, books, online courses, movies, Facebook Lives, you know what I mean? Like it's all kind of bubbling up out of the collective. So how is the school of multidimensional intuition different? And how are you focusing on more like intuitive development than some of these other teachings?
Thank you. I would say, first off, the thing that makes this different is that it's really not about opening up or awakening standardized abilities. One of the things that, people often will like come to me about, in their clearings or just, their sort of, their healing journey is that people seek to open up energy centers in the body, like the third eye, like the solar plexus. We are taught that there are these standardized abilities that come in. And the reality is each and every one of us chose an ability. We chose many of them. We chose many aspects of ourselves that we were going to be working with over this course of the physical lifetime. And so one of the things that we do a little bit differently is we approach the human body with incredible specificity. And one of the things that I have found to be incredibly beneficial in my own work, especially when we're starting to open up our intuitive abilities, there are key energy centers in the body that we will start a healing or a detoxification program with first. And so some of the other speakers have been talking about those here today, the solar plexus, the throat chakra. I do a lot of work with the vagus nerve, but one of the things that makes the school of multidimensional intuition different is that we approach things from a very deliberately individual and specific wavelength for each person. There is no one singular path toward opening up our mission or our calling or that next version of you. And so what we do is take a very, very specific path toward really the first thing we do is open up the non-physical channels in the body, because a lot of us right now are experiencing tremendous amount of buildup, tremendous amount of frequency interference. There are literal wavelengths that, I mean, if you want to get technical, they're coming from our phones and our, like our tablets at every given moment. So what we do is go through a multi-layered process of not only detoxification, but individual instruction for each person. And anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but it is a whole new era at this stage of the journey. And what it really is overall is part of kind of that, this is that renaissance of consciousness that we were told about. And many of us right now are aware of the level to which a lot of people are showing up on the public level to sort of give these teachings or these ascension classes or these sort of activations. And one of the things we're finding is that each and every person will have their own specific frequency. So, the overall mission of what we are doing right now is to help you find your specific frequency, because what happens when we do that is incredible changes take place. Our bodies change, our minds change, our faces change for those of us that have been watching each other over the past few years, and especially that tribe, that group that you came in here with changes. And this is the stage in which all those things are going to happen. So at the risk of going on and on, yes, it is a very unique approach. And so thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. And something, I'm going to go a little rogue here because you brought up something and it kind of bubbled up in my own reality. When you do focus on, or when somebody comes with an intention to focus on a certain chakra, they believe that they know, right? It's their intuitive understanding that they have a blockage in this chakra or that chakra. Sometimes what I have found personally is when you work on a certain chakra, it's not so much a resolution to that chakra. It actually opens you up to the other issues that need to be resolved in the other chakras. It's kind of like when you're working with a dammed up water, right? Because energy and water, they both flow. So when you remove one dam, like it finds the next place that it gets kind of stopped up in. So I love that you have that individual approach, because there is absolutely nothing cookie cutter about the science of us as beings, you know, from physical to metaphysical. And so I think that that's really important for the audience to take away. What your school offers is really that individual, not attention, but that individual awareness that, you know, it's not just here's the exercise to unblock your throat chakra. Like, that's just not really how it works, right? You know, you have to work with the chakras around it, the meridians that connect to it. I've always loved that you work with the vagus nerve and the different parts of the physical body, because the physical body is just the manifestation of those chakras and those blockages and so forth. So there's my little weird rant and plug again for Matthew's work, because it's really important to understand that his different approach versus some of the other modalities available, that I would say. So, okay, let me get back on track now. Let me pull us back. So one of the things that you and I talked about prior to the interview is that a lot of people are feeling the insanity, politicians, the media here on the earth plane. You even mentioned, you know, a lot of the weaponization that we are inundated with every day is coming directly from our phones that are sitting right next to us, the computers we're talking on, the headphones we have in our ears. So can you just talk a little bit about that and kind of how it's also affecting like friends and family, and how it's also affecting kind of the starseed awakening process as well?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I think it's a very good question. I would say, first off, a lot of what I would call the most recent viral insanity, or the crazy, like, viral control matrix that has been dropped upon us over this past year, for me, and, I'll just say this, I tend to oversimplify, or I might have a tendency to oversimplify, but when I look at the totality of the energetic movement over the past year, for me, it looks very much like a thing that we call the Wetiko, also known as a mind virus. It's a term originally coined by the Algonquin tribe, I believe it was the northeastern United States, or Canada rather. And what they describe is actually a parasitic mind virus frequency, an incredibly narcissistic, even cannibalistic frequency that seemed to overtake the eyes and the bodies and the consciousness of, I guess we'll call it that stage in, colonial, America, the sort of quote unquote white settlers at that stage. And so what we're finding is that is actually representative of, hundreds of, years down the line, representative of a true actual parasitic frequency that is interacting once again on the earth plane. And so a lot of people in sort of the Ascension, terminology, school, we will call that an AI. And the reality is it may very well be, whether it's an AI, whether it's a mind virus, whether it's just a great wave of darkness or our own collective shadow. It is undeniable at this stage of the game that we are dealing with a very, very serious, and it's not a physical pandemic, but what I believe to be an energetic pandemic that is sweeping this, literal globe at this stage of the game. And what I've observed is that I believe it actually infects both sides. What we're seeing right now is deep, deep polarization, depending on what side of that, sort of timeline alignment that you want to fall into. And for me, most of it is summarized within what I would call the Wetiko, but also through a phenomenon known as frequency interference, through, things that, I probably won't say the name of the new internet system that everyone gets censored for saying, but everyone knows exactly what it is. And so along with the new wavelengths of, non-physical frequency, bandwidth, Bluetooth, and all those things, we are being subjected to a tremendous amount of not only emotional influencing, thought-based influencing, all sorts of incredible, just incredible amounts of information are being beamed into the human body at this stage. And it's also a big part of fourth density. It's part of what happens when the human consciousness begins to move outside of the physical body. We start to become aware of those energies. We start to share them on a different level. And so what's happening right now is we are being called to purify the mind, body, spirit complex for the very important work that each of us chose to begin, especially in 2020. And so one of the things we're doing in the ongoing educational projects that I'm creating right now is helping people figure out direct protocols to begin to remove the layers of not only heavy metal particulate matter building up around the upper chakras, but also emotional and energetic buildup in the lymphatic system, in the interstitium, in the vagus nerve, in the spleen, in the liver, and not only those, the meridian pathways, because what we're finding in the lower octaves of what I call fourth density is that it's about a lot more than just what's going on within the chakra system. One of the things we discover in fourth density is that there is an incredibly vast array of non-physical, we could even say architecture or etheric structures that line the outside of the body that only become available when we reach certain, wavelengths of consciousness. And so we are now in those very wavelengths of consciousness, and everyone here on the earth plane, in my opinion, or rather, at least those who are able to hear the call. And I just want to say that if you're here on this broadcast, if you are part of the group of beings that somehow you're random to stumble into this moment, it is not an accident. You were summoned here. Some elements of your life or your higher self counsel brought you here for some reason. And it might not be for the words that I'm saying. Everyone here is receiving something unique. But one of the things we're finding is that the pathway toward true planetary liberation is through, number one, we have to make that vessel, that tool, that element that we are interacting with on the physical plane pure and clear and ready to act. And so anyway, not to go on a whole other weird rant, but we are at the stage of the game in which this is planetary liberation. And so I will pause there at the risk of going on. So thank you.
No, that's great, because that actually leads perfectly into the next question, which is the parasitic construct. So, ultimately everything that you just spoke about has a manifestation, and that one of the manifestations, and probably one of the bigger ones, is that parasitic construct, the implants, the entity attachments, and even especially as we're becoming more aware architecture that you spoke about outside of our physical body, we become aware of those entities and those higher density, higher dimensional, negative leaning entities that know they're aware of that architecture outside of us. They know how to attach to it. They know how to manipulate us and so forth. So can you speak a little bit on that and how those things actually affect us?
Yes, absolutely. Or at least I can within the realm of my own personal experience. And I'm definitely one of those psychics and intuitives, you guys. I'm not one of those people that's like, let me tell you how it actually is, everyone. This is the way that it is, and it's only like this. Because I think one of the things I've found that I think for those of us who are truly operating in what I would call that fourth density astral space, we will begin to discover that one of the first experiences we have upon moving our consciousness into that place is that everyone will be perceiving these energies through a different lens. And that lens is directly dependent upon the input, the experience, the emotional discernment, the emotional distortions, the condition of the physical body. And so what is happening at this stage, and what's crazy is I almost lost the essence of your question there, which is very interesting because it was about the parasitic construct. But what we are finding is that there is also a completely separate and existing duality. It's a literal fact to our existence. And what's happening at this great stage of upheaval is that both of those currents, both of those timelines, both of those energies, both of those elements are equally available to each of us at all times. Now, a lot of people talk about that great darkness, and here is the reality. This is one thing I will say very firmly. For most of us that are able to perceive the great change that is taking place, this darkness that we are battling against, this invisible enemy that we were talking about, it is in the last stages of its life cycle. It is very clearly in the last stages of its existence here in this plane. But what happens is in those last stages is it's very much like an animal in the corner, and it's striking out. And so what's happening is for those of us that have those holes in discernment, those emotional wounds, for those of us that are still dealing with the parasitic thought forms, that are still consuming on frightening levels the weaponized food, or still subjecting ourselves to the mass media entrainment and the brainwaves that we're receiving from our devices, for those of us that are not clear, we are utterly influenced. And so what's happening right now is that there is equal parts of that interacting at any given time. And for those of us that are choosing to step forward into what we would call, it's always a very general term, that ascension timeline, what we need to do is continue to focus solely on what we're bringing to the table and solely on what we're being called to create, to enhance, to heal. And anyway, without going on another long rant, the parasitic construct is part of the duality of our existence here in this realm. And at this stage, our focus is on the light, the transition, and really that new earth timeline. But we need to be aware of the darkness. And so one of the things we're teaching in the classes is how to clear that, how to work with implants, how to work with, etheric attachments. And we're also finding at the same time, it is different for each and every person. And so I don't know if I explained that or made it more complicated, but I will pause there. So.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I love that I'm not even sure if you're aware that you said it this way, but you said that you work with the entity attachments. And
Absolutely.
I think that that's a really critical point to understand, like from the audience's perspective, is that, a lot of the infiltration into the quote unquote love and light, you know what I mean? Like communities and so forth was, part of the thing that kept us, especially the higher energy, the light workers, the higher density beings that came here. What a great way to actually, what a great operation to enact upon us than to infiltrate that love and light concept where we never look at the darkness, we never look at the shadows, we're just supposed to sit and Jung said it the best, or Jung said it the best, just imagine figures of light and everything will be okay. And very wounded, very traumatized still, and we just actually kind of keep perpetuating a cycle. So I really love that you said that you work with the attachments, with the entities, because the light is equal to the dark, and duality creates reality, and to work with them and find that way to release them and let them go by acknowledging that they are there, by looking into the darkness. You know what I mean? And seeing that, I think it's just a really profound evolution of this community and of this like kind of vector of the world that is imperative right now. Because just like you said, I say all the time, we are facing the dog caged. Like this is the death rattle of the bad guys, right? Of the darkness, of the oppression. Like this is why it is so intense. This is why, they are the dog caged, and they know it. They're aware of it. You know what I mean? So they have no qualms pulling out every stop, every punch, so forth. So just being aware of all these things and working with these energies instead of against them, or even worse, ignoring them or avoiding them, I just think is really imperative. So just another like feather in the cap of, you guys should check out Matt's school. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So Matt, we have just under, we're about 5-6 minutes left. And so what I wanted to kind of bring it down to, before we actually do get into plugging like any events you have coming up and your websites and all of that stuff, is we are in, not only are we in the most contentious time of this planet, but this next month is definitely one of the crescendos, right? This election coming up, it's not really political. It's actually got a very cosmological, metaphysical, global, it's tied to really the next level of ascension with this planet, the planet's ascension, humanity's ascension. And so we're going to see a lot of turmoil. We're going to see a lot of tumultuousness. It's going to be very contentious. Do you have any just kind of guidance from your understanding of the other realms, your understanding of energy, of how the best way for humanity to weather this next month or so?
Oh, I certainly hope so. I would say the first thing I would say is, we are sharing energy at this stage on an incredibly unprecedented level. It is part of one of the foundations, one of the hallmarks of the lower octaves of fourth density, which for those of you guys that aren't familiar with that term, it is the wavelength of consciousness, rather experiential consciousness that we are having right now, that we are sitting in, that we are existing in. We are in the lower octaves of fourth density. And while we are still here in physical third density bodies, our consciousness is interacting, exchanging information and energy with other versions of us on the earth plane on an incredible level, entirely outside of the human body. And so for those of you guys that are watching the insanity, that are watching the craziness, I would say first off, become aware that when you're feeling other people, when you're in that state, when you're in a meditation, when you're hearing your friends and family and feeling those emotional waves and those events roll through your body, we are at the stage of this human experience in which that is not just inside you anymore. We are sending, we are receiving. And one of the focuses of my work in the coming year is helping people unpack those very tools that we chose before we came in here. Because sometimes it's a little bit cheesy, you guys, but I like to say that, you know, for many of us, upon coming into this physical body and choosing to be born, and the reality is, guys, we choose to come here. Don't get mad at me, but it's true. But for many of us, we chose this time. We chose to pop into the earth plane specifically right now because we knew this was going to take place. We knew this incredible planetary liberation. And so what I like to tell people at this stage of the game, and if, you know, I'm just going to say it again, if you're one of the people here watching this, this is our soul group. This is our mission. Our mission at this stage is to find the others, to truly develop your abilities, to work through your distortions, to heal the inner child, and to detox that physical body. We are all needed at this stage of the game. And other people have heard me say this. It's kind of cheesy, you guys, but this is the stage in the movie, everyone, where you get that knock on the door and there's someone standing out that door and they're like, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, your world needs you. Your country needs you. Come back into service. And so we are at that stage of the game. If you're one of the people hearing me, one of the ways you can do that is through our school. It's a very, very legitimate thing that we're doing right now. It's called the School of Multidimensional Intuition. We are on YouTube and also through Patreon at Remember Your Mission. And so what we are doing is strengthening, enhancing, and empowering ourselves for the next stage of the mission. So I will pause there because otherwise I'll keep talking. I know we don't have much time, but yeah.
No, that's great. Actually, Neil gave me a heads up. We do have a few extra minutes, like maybe 2 or 3 extra minutes. So if you want to keep going, I can give you another 2 minutes, or if you want to switch to something else.
I'm happy to take a question if there's anything else you want to throw in there.
Yeah, let me see.
I will say this, actually. I realize you were right about to take a question, but we're getting what I believe to be a very, very important kind of signal that I think if there's something that sort of this group needs to be made aware of here today, because a lot of people at this stage of the game, we are watching the news, we are watching television, we are watching our devices, and we're getting hit with so much information that we don't know what's what. We get these feelings, we get these emotions, we get these signals. And one of the things that in my work, I believe we need to unpack right now is this thing called the frequency of truth. And that is a literal ability that each and every human being has to actually feel the resonance of what is true, what is resonant, what is leading you toward that most optimal timeline. And so just a little bit of a clue is just something you guys can look at in your own research. For those of you guys that are trying to open up your ability to feel the frequency of truth, start working with your vagus nerve, number one. And it's spelled VAGUS. For those of you guys that have never heard of it, it's one of the most important information pathways in the body, especially in fourth density. Number two, one of the other areas that you can just begin to research and just gain clarity on is the lymphatic system. I believe it is one of the most overlooked areas within the physical body, especially when it comes to perceiving truth, to perceiving energy. And so I work with the vagus nerve, the lymphatic system. And then I would say finally, for those of you out there that are feeling these abilities, you're feeling these skills, you're feeling this call to step into a mission, and maybe you have no idea what it is, but you hear it and you see other people stepping up in this world and they're creating and they're doing and they're stepping into this new stage. For those of you guys that are trying to do that and you don't know how, one of the ways you can begin to uncover that pathway in your body is through learning the meridian system. Some of you guys are like, what? The meridian system? But it is the true circuitry of the human body. And so in my work, it's one of the keys toward true clarity and development of intuition. So I will pause there. It's kind of a mouthful, but there you go.
Fabulous. So I want to get in really quick. We had a comment from the audience, Bernie A.V. Conkin. And this isn't a question, Matthew. This is just a little kind of nudge to you. He says, Matthew, so much of what you are saying is just instantly resonating with me, a fellow old soul vibrating on the same higher dimensional frequencies. It is a pleasure to meet you and experience what you do for the first time. So Bernie says hi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. Join us. There's a reason you came here.
For sure. And so we're also getting people asking about how to find you. So let's go ahead and move right into kind of plugging what you do. What I'd like you to tell them is your website, as well as your YouTube, Facebook, any social media you have, and then any upcoming events you would like everybody to know about.
Absolutely. For those of you guys that are seeking individual clearing reading work, to learn more about classes, you can go to rememberyourmission.com. You can also take advantage of a lot of free workshops. I have a tremendous amount of free content up on YouTube at the School of Multidimensional Intuition. For those of you guys that want to join an actual monthly multidimensional training program in which we are literally learning how to become energetic healers. We start with our own bodies first. You can join our Patreon group. We meet every single month, and that is at patreon.com/rememberyourmission. Finally, I will mention we have a very, very important event coming up on October 25th. For anyone out there who is interested in what I believe to be true multidimensional and intuitive healer training, we have a series that I'm creating known as the Fourth Density Survival Series. It is a 6-week online Zoom class in which we are learning the true function, or rather what I believe to be the fourth density, because it's always a heavy word, the fourth density function of the meridian system in the body. And the sort of overall goal is that we're opening up our intuitive channels on a whole different level. So that begins October 25th at rememberyourmission.com. So thank you.